Okay, let's set the scene. The year is 1588. Spain is the global superpower, and they've just launched the biggest, baddest fleet Europe has ever seen, all with one goal: to conquer England. They called it the Invincible Armada. But, as we know, it ended up being one of the most famous military disasters in all of history. So, what went wrong? How could a fleet that massive fail so spectacularly? Well, the story of the Armada isn't just about one big battle. Oh no, it's a perfect storm of political ambition, wild new technology, some tactical genius, and just some really, really bad luck. Let's dig in and unpack the fatal flaws and brilliant moves that brought down the most powerful navy on the planet. All right, first thing you need to know, this invasion didn't just happen overnight. This was a plan that was decades in the making. The Spanish even had a cool name for it: La Empresa de Inglaterra, the Enterprise of England. And for Spain's King Philip II, this was personal. It was deeply, deeply political. And this right here, this is the why. For King Philip, it was a whole cocktail of reasons. First, he saw Queen Elizabeth as a Protestant heretic, someone who shouldn't even be on the throne. Then there was the fact that Elizabeth was secretly funding a Dutch rebellion against Spain, a huge thorn in Philip's side. And on top of all that, he was just plain sick of English pirates, guys like Sir Francis Drake, constantly raiding his treasure ships coming back from the New World. So for him, this invasion, it was the ultimate solution to solve all his problems in one fell swoop. So what was the grand strategy? It was this massive, two-pronged attack, incredibly ambitious. Step 1, the Armada sails up the English Channel and basically takes control of the sea. It's meant to be like a giant naval shield. Step 2, it links up with Spain's elite army, the Duke of Parma's forces, who are waiting in Flanders. And then, step 3, the fleet protects thousands of soldiers as they cross the channel on barges to invade England. You gotta admit, on paper, it sounds pretty unstoppable, right? But here's where the first crack in the plan appears. And it happens before a single ship even leaves port. Spain's best, most experienced admiral, a guy named Santa Cruz, suddenly dies. And his replacement, the Duke of Medina Sidonia. Now, he was a good manager, a great nobleman, but he had zero experience commanding a fleet at sea. He actually wrote to the king saying, hey, I'm probably not the right guy for this, but he was basically told not to worry. God would see them through. Yikes, not exactly a confidence booster. Okay, so the Armada finally sets sail and enters the English Channel. And this is where things get really interesting, because this wasn't just a clash of two navies. No, this was a clash of two completely different ways of fighting at sea. Yeah, this table really lays it all out. Think of the Spanish ships, the galleons, as these huge, floating fortresses. They were built to get in close, fire one massive, devastating volley from their heavy cannons, and then grapple the enemy ship so their soldiers could swarm aboard and fight hand-to-hand. The English, though, they were playing a totally different game. They developed these new, race-built ships that were smaller, faster, and way more maneuverable. They were designed to be mobile gun platforms. Their whole strategy was to stay at a distance and just pummel the enemy with their lighter, faster reloading cannons. And that maneuverability was everything. It was the key. The English ships could literally dance around the giant Spanish galleons, just peppering them with cannon shots while staying safely out of reach of those deadly grappling hooks. In the first few skirmishes up the channel, you could already see this was a huge, huge advantage for the English. So after some fighting, the Armada is a bit bruised, but it's still mostly intact. And it finally reaches its big meeting point off the coast of Calais in France. This is it. The whole invasion depends on this moment. But the English, they had a nasty surprise up their sleeves. So just imagine this for a second. You've got over 100 Spanish ships anchored in this tight, powerful crescent formation. It looks impenetrable. They're just waiting for the signal from the Duke of Parma's army on the shore. The problem was, communications were terrible, and Parma's army just wasn't ready to go. The Armada was basically a sitting duck. And that's when the English unleashed what can only be described as hell. In the middle of the night, they took 8 of their own ships, packed them to the gills with anything that would burn, pitch, gunpowder, tar, set them ablaze, and just let the wind and the tide carry these floating bonfires right into the Spanish fleet. Absolute panic. The Spanish sailors saw these things coming and thought they were hell burners, basically floating bombs that had been used against them before. So in that chaos, the Spanish captains made a decision that would doom them. They ordered their men to cut the anchor cables to get away from the flames. And just like that, the Armada's beautiful, strong, defensive formation was completely shattered. The ships were scattered all over the open sea, totally disorganized.
Okay, so the sun comes up, the Spanish fleet is a total mess, and the English see their golden opportunity. This chaos after the fireship attack leads directly into the biggest, most important battle of the whole campaign, the Battle of Gravelines.
At dawn, the English fleet swooped in. For 8 straight hours, they just hammered the scattered Spanish ships. And this time they got in close. Their faster guns fired devastating broadside after broadside, ripping huge holes into the hulls of those big, clumsy galleons. Now, if you look at the numbers, you might think, only 5 ships sunk or captured. It doesn't sound like a total wipeout. But many, many more were badly damaged. The real English victory here wasn't about sinking ships. It was about this. This was the checkmate. The Battle of Gravelines was a complete strategic disaster for Spain. The fighting, plus a strong wind blowing from the south, pushed the entire Armada north, away from its rendezvous point. There was now zero chance of picking up Parma's army. The enterprise of England was officially dead in the water. But the horror story for the Spanish sailors was far from over. I mean, the invasion was off, but now they had to get home. And the only way back to Spain was to take the long, dangerous route north, all the way around Scotland and Ireland. So you've got these ships that are already beaten up from the battle. The crews are running low on food and fresh water. And now they have to sail into the brutal North Atlantic. And to make things worse, it's late in the year, and they sail headfirst into a series of incredibly violent autumn storms. And this chart, this tells you everything you need to know. The English Navy absolutely beat the Armada in a fight, but it was the Atlantic Ocean that truly destroyed it. Look at that difference. Only a handful of ships lost in combat, compared to dozens lost to the weather. And here's where it all comes full circle. Remember how the Spanish captains cut their anchor cables back at Calais to escape the fireships? Well, now, without their main heavy anchors, the damaged ships had no way to ride out the storms. They couldn't stop themselves from being blown towards the coast. They were just helpless, and they got smashed to pieces on the rocks of Ireland and Scotland. Thousands of men were lost. So, as you can imagine, the defeat of the Armada instantly became legendary. But the reality of what happened after the battle is a lot more complicated than the simple myth. Back in England, this victory was sealed in the public's mind by Queen Elizabeth's absolutely iconic speech to her troops. This was a PR masterpiece. It perfectly framed the win as this divine miracle, a true David versus Goliath story of Protestant England standing up to the Catholic tyrant. It was incredible propaganda. But let's bust a few myths right now. Was Spain's navy destroyed? Nope. Philip rebuilt it and sent 3 more armadas, though they also failed. Did England become the world's new superpower overnight? Not at all. The war with Spain actually dragged on for another 16 years. The real legacy was 2 things. First, it was a massive morale boost for England, a huge shot of national pride. And second, it triggered a revolution in naval warfare. The era of grappling and boarding was over. The age of the long-range gunship had officially begun. So that leaves us with the big question, right? Was England's victory just a lucky break? Was it the so-called Protestant wind that saved them? Or was it a hard-earned win, thanks to better ships, smarter tactics, and superior sailors that literally changed naval combat forever? The truth, as it usually does, is probably somewhere right in the middle.